Hello everybody, and welcome to the LJL officially unofficial, or LJLOU as we like to call it. I'm Mars1, I'll be hosting these games, a blast from the past, but still golden as ever. In the middle is our play-by-play caster, Samuel, Initialize Hapgood. Samuel, welcome.
Glad to be here, Lexi.
Always. And the man over on the opposite side of the screen is, well, the one and only Colorcaster Nightmare himself.
And I'm really confused because I just came into the country and I was wearing a DFM jersey, but for some reason, as soon as I crossed into Europe, it became G2 because they're pretty much the same team, right? Hey, I'm Alex Sumner-Mera. I'm back again.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Something about forcing narratives. I don't know whether we've had this discussion. Maybe we want to table that one for after the broadcast.
Hidden content or content that maybe one day seen in some capacity. We'll figure that out. We'll figure that out one day. Gentlemen, we must go on to our first game, though. DetonatioN FocusMe facing off against Sengoku Gaming. These are two titans of the region. Obviously, Sengoku has emerged only very recently, relatively speaking, on the region, but has made a defining statement with their second place in spring and third place in summer last year. DetonatioN FocusMe, though, are the titans, and they are the ones to take down, and they're 6-0 at the moment, Nightmare. How strong is this team?
So they have themselves one hell of a stacked roster. They ended up bringing in, who I would say best mid laner in the region from 2020, Arya. Yeah, he was contended with by the likes of Pyrion, a couple of other names around the table, but Arya was on a failing team in CGA from that year and really managed to make something work of it. Now he's on DFM, he's slotting into more of a control mage role, playing a lot of Orianna, playing a lot of Seraphine too, and kind of enabling this team with the huge champion pool in the way that Saras kind of struggled to do at points when he was on the roster. We do have some questions about them, particularly in that bot side with Kazu, but DFM's now sat at 6-0. They are absolutely the team to beat, and I mean, we were asking last broadcast, the next time they face V3, is that the next time that they're really going to be challenged?
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. But before they face off against V3, Sengoku Gaming haven't been doing as well as a lot of analysts around the world were thinking Initialize. And what's the issue for them?
So Sengoku are coming into this game at 2-4, and it's been a little rough. They went initially 0-3, but after that, they've kind of gone 1-1. So the first week, 0-2, then it was 1-1, then it was 1-1. And despite there being some serious problems in the losses, particularly around mid-jungle synergies and some disconnects when things start going wrong.
Yeah.
Particularly if the game starts falling away from them, it tends to fall away real hard in those team fights. If things, and maybe a little bit more worrying, for the likes of DFM, if there was a world where this 6-0 team could be punished, we've seen one or two little cracks in the armor, especially this early on in the split, that Gango and Enti have been putting up some fantastic laning stats, and if you can attack that, coach come substitute Kazi, it might be a little world where this 2-4 team can cause an upset.
I like your optimism, and I think that's definitely an opportunity for the side of Sengoku, gentlemen. Who do we actually predict is going to win this? This has to be a DetonatioN FocusMe or three ways, right? I'm going DFM. I don't see a reason to go any other way.
They are the super team in the LJL. Sam has given a window of opportunity, but it's a window. It's not a door, and you got to fit a freight train through there at the end of the day sometimes. It's going to be a bit more than just that difficult parallel park.
Well, before we do go over to the pick and ban phase, I want to both get your thoughts on the top lane, and this time we're going to switch the teams over. Nightmare, talk about the top lane of Sengoku and how Paz is going to have to try and overcome Ebby in this matchup.
Well, Paz, at least in terms of the LJL top laners, is one of the very few that have managed to take a title away from DetonatioN FocusMe, because he did that on V3 last year. And I'm sure that plenty of our regular viewers would be a little bit sick of us saying, this guy is our world's representative, this guy is our summer champion from V3. Paz has been such a consistent player for so long. He's not necessarily the person that will solo win you a game, but he is never the person that solo loses it for you. And against someone like Ebby, that can be a very important thing because he's trying to achieve the opposite for DFM.
But for DFM Initialize, Ebby's in the top lane. He's the face of the top lane in the LJL, right?
Yeah. He is, and he has been part of this DFM squad that, as we said, has been pulling a bit of a G2 this split, where they have pulled out some picks, some style, some what would the word be? Bravado. Some chances to kind of really show off. This guy's been running the teleport ignite in the top lane on a Kali and trying to look for these level 6 all-ins. Some have been fantastic, some have been anything but. Go back and watch that unfortunate attempt onto Apperman where things get turned around a minute later. But for all that, there has been a lot of faith put into these DFM carries, and Ebby is no exception to that. He has been putting up some fantastic stats, particularly in the skirmishes, even if the laning phase has sometimes been a little bit more like, I'm just going to throw myself at this and look for the outplay. We appreciate the style. It hasn't always worked out, but there is certainly a lot of confidence in this guy, and mostly it's been rewarded. Hell, they're 6-0.
They are indeed 6-0, and gentlemen, as this is a blast from the past, I get to just go, hey, gentlemen, take it away.
Thank you so much, Lexi. Indeed, we move away from the analyst desk and we move instead into the business casting this game. DFM obviously on the blue side, Sengoku Gaming on the red, and that means it's Ebby, Steel, Aria, Utapon, and still Coach Cum support Kazu rounding out the roster for DFM.
On the other side, we have Sengoku Gaming. So that's Paz, Crash, Ramune, Gango, and NT. A very changed lineup from 2020, as we're saying. But coming into spring, at least they managed to pick up some momentum, because they'll definitely need that to try and take a win off of DFM.
Yeah, well, the problem is it's always a little bit nervous when you start saying 1-on-1 week going having momentum, but considering they scraped a win in the second week for the first time, did Sengoku, and then they looked a little bit more confident in week 3. There is some growth here, but this is a massive challenge to see whether they can continue on the journey they've maybe started, whether they get stymied here. We've got a few bands I think we ought to touch on as well at this point. It's kind of the Olaf away from Steel, who has been very strong on the champion, alongside that Twisted Fate, which is such a big global presence right now. But on the other side, you know, Set and Thresh, perhaps not necessarily what I would have expected, but both are pretty strong picks for NT in particular, alongside that Talia. But it has meant Udyr's been left up, and that's a blue 1 first pick, and I don't think that's a massive surprise to anybody.
So this is patch 11.2. That raises a lot of questions about, well, where's your Kai'Sa? What's happening with Samira? Of course, Olaf is much more of a priority pick on this patch. So is the Rel. So that means that Paz, the Rock, the person that does tend to hold the tide, hold back so much pressure in that top side, has a nullifying pick in that Now Ebby has to think, all right, what have I got that really wants to take down this pick? Whereas you can see the Sengoku saying, we can play make on the bottom side now.
It's also taking that Rel away from Kazu, who has really favored the pick. Of course, he's still going to look towards the Alistair, which he's also honestly made some pretty good plays on. There was one in particular where he managed to flash over the back of a Baron pit to headbutt an Orianna in straight after. There have been some good playmaking moves from this guy, but you can definitely see there's a world where you overstep a little on Alistair, particularly in the early lane. And Kazu, you know, he has shown some propensity, at least in lane, to make those micro missteps.
Somehow Kai'Sa ends up falling through to blue 3. That's, you know, the third rotation of the pick and ban. Kai'Sa, make no mistake, is still the most prioritized AD carry in the world on this patch. Of course, it's not really until 11.4 where we start going to see a lot of changes to that champion. On the other side, though, it means that Sengoku at least do get their preferred, actually no, they don't. It's the Cardinal Cinecasting to talk about hovers. Samira not considered. In fact, Crash going back to Hecarim.
Look, I will forgive you for the Samira hover, because honestly, it feels a little bit odd to not pick it right there in red 3 when it's going to likely get banned away here by DFM. And the moment we speak about it, the moment it happens, but it does, however, allow Crash to get a hold of a jungler that is high farming, high damage, and high priority for Crash particularly. He's had a game on this one where he really shadowed his top laner well and came up very ahead on the champion. So clearly feels pretty confident on it, confident enough to put Gango onto a less high priority AD carry, which is not necessarily what we've seen as a favored thing to do, at least early on. You kind of want your AD carry and your jungler on your first rotation if you can help it.
In a lot of ways, yes. So now I'm thinking Senna Jin, I suppose, is a fullback AD carry too. What are you trying to do that really increases your dive potential? Because, I mean, that's exactly what Sengoku are going towards. The Senna is not going to be allowed banned away by DFM, which makes sense because even though Senna is not a champion that's really good at running forward, you can always commit your ultimate. And if you're committing that on top of the stoppable onslaught from the Hecarim, things can get really, really dicey for the backline if you do pick yourself a mage for Arya in that mid lane. They actually end up locking in the
Ooh,
Callista, which,
that's
as
a special.
opposed to that Senna, very good at running forward in team fights.
And this time he doesn't even have Ari on his team to force him to flex it to mid. So it will be Gango's Callista. He has put up some nuts numbers on this champion in the past. Even if there have been shenanigans where Callista ended up mid before last year. Unlikely, I think, for
Yeah,
Ramane to do that this
happened
time
twice.
out. But you can see DFM hovering the Akali. It is a flex, but has more often than not gone towards Ebby in recent weeks, and we'll see where it truly ends up after we've got this last pick blocked in for Detonation Focus Me. I suspect it will be something probably for Arya and that Lucian,
Okay.
likely towards the mid, but is still flexible if they do lock it in.
It is. You can technically go towards that Lucian top. Not really something we've seen so much of. Plus, we know that Ebby has had his choice of counter pick towards the Gnar is that Akali. So I'm assuming this is going to be the Lucian mid into whatever Ramane now has to try and survive this lane with. Because let's be honest, you don't really counter a Lucian mid. You just end up either surviving or falling by the wayside. The hovering over the Victor, you can farm it out, but often you do have that lane pushed in against you, particularly in the early game, which makes me a little bit worried for Ramane and Crash because they have struggled a lot of the time to contend with some of the better mid-jungle 2v2s across this league, and they don't exactly have the best matchup right now with the Udyr and Lucian both being very strong in the early game.
Okay, so we've got a Lucian and this Akali in the top side, which clearly sort of designates where you expect DFM to be playing, namely through the priority you expect both champions probably to have. Of course, Gnar with the boomerang and the range potentially has some ways to at least challenge the Akali over the wave, but you can kind of see where Steel is likely going to be spending his time, whereas on the other side, you've got a Callista and a Rel.
Yes.
Who are more than ready to start things up early on, and I suspect we might know where both junglers are going to be looking.
I suppose so. I think that Steel probably has the advantage in the more varied options. Can go to, I mean, Udyr can gank anything, right? Whereas Hecarim has a few more check boxes to tick before you really start angling towards lanes. You know, you really want yourself to have that level 6 mark. Udyr just needs like level 3. Let's be honest. He can do a full clear and start wandering out onto the map in whatever animal form he may choose. Now we've got these full comps. I'm looking at this and thinking, oh my gosh, lots of close range carries, lots of diving in. We're going to have a bloodbath, Sam.
I suspect we might, and we've seen both comps here. We've seen probably DFM likely to want to play around their solo lane as best they can. On the other side, of course, we've seen Sengoku game. It's like, well, Callista Rel, I suspect we might want to be seeing some action around there if you're a Sengoku fan. You said a lot of close range carries. We're expecting a bloodbath, but is there anybody you expect to have this edge early on into the game?
Nameplate's off. I do like Sengoku's comp, right? Hecarim, Callista, Rel. I mean, heck, even the Victor and stuff like that. I think most of the champions on Sengoku thrive against the likes of the Akali, Kai'Sa, Udyr, and Alistar diving in. And if Lucian then has to be worried about a gravity field and worried about the Hecarim ultimate, the Callista ultimate, Gnar transforming, there are so many different angles of attack for Sengoku. DFM will have to showcase their team fighting prowess to make sure that they don't just get walloped early into the team fight. Another thing is that, of course, we're looking at DFM as a team that is really good in the mid to late game. We know that. We know they're very good at team fighting. They're the best team fighting team within the LJL. But if they get hammered early, they have started to show some weaknesses. It hasn't led to a loss yet, but they have sometimes given up solo kills, given up CS, given up a lot of towers too. And against the likes of a Callista, which is very infamous for destroying that laning phase, I wonder if this is something that Sengoku can play around and try and keep DFM, particularly their bot lane, down early.
And nameplates on. I mentioned it in the pregame. Gango and Enti have actually looked very strong in lane, and Kazu has misstepped once or twice, even if honestly they have made some good 2v2 plays as well. They've made some missteps alongside those good plays, and that is definitely punishable by the likes of a Callista and a Rel, especially when you put like a stun field around the Callista who's hopping at you. That's always a little scary. It's why Rel is such a good pairing with this champion right now, especially when you can just throw the horse lady at the enemy team, which she gets to then ult herself.
Yeah.
Like, that's a brutal combo.
And if Rel wasn't already hard enough to kill by themselves, you've got the Callista ultimate to check it, to keep in check now too, because that can just pull that champion right out of the fray yet again. It gives another vector to go into the team fight where you can use the Callista ult into the Crashdown, into the Magnet Storm. It really is a plethora of engage options for Sengoku. And one of the things I talked about this team is we see their lovely faces popping up on screen as the transition comes through. Is they are a group of players which I would pencil them down as just hyper aggressive. Crash, known for to be a guy that is the Battle Ward, one of the original Battle Wards. Paz, maybe not, maybe they're odd one out, but heck, even Ramune, Gango. I mean, Gango and Agro were on the hyper aggressive CGA team together. This team of Sengoku have a draft which seems to me fits a bit more their player identities than a lot of the games that they've been struggling with earlier in the split.
Yeah, absolutely. Steel does manage to get in and get that early ward, no little fighting, and to kind of bring it back, as I took us a little bit off tangent there, I do agree. This is Ramune on a control mage that feels meta and something he's relatively comfortable on, alongside some aggressive diving options for Enti, for Gango, and a sort of semi-weak side I can play how I'm asked to play pick in the Gnar as well, that is relatively versatile in how you want to play and build it. You can go for the split push domination build. You can go for I'm just going to play weak side and turn it to team fights build, and I think that's probably quite sensible.
Heck, I mean, I've actually cast a Frostfire Gauntlet
really?
Gnar game this split, and I was thinking, look, they got crushed in lane. Actually, you can just divert your build and say, look, I just need to get into the backline and ult at some point. Let's do everything to make sure I get to that point. I'm not sure Paz is the player necessarily to do that. I mean, most Gnars don't at the pro level. And speaking of that top side, going to be, of course, lots of early trading to see who gets that early priority. And NT still an award.
He is. They know exactly what's going on, and the AI bot is giving DFM a very hefty early advantage.
It's big for AI bot,
yeah. AI bot early on tends to be significantly more even. But Blitzcrank decides he knows where he is favoring early on. And honestly, Udyr, the Kai'Sa, Hell, Ebby, Zakali, those all feel pretty damn good. But you can see as well here, if DFM don't come out to this early lead, then the power spikes at least kind of favoring Sengoku over this game.
It's kind of flattering to see what we said in action in terms of, oh yeah, nameplates off. Sengoku have got themselves a nice comp in a lot of ways. Nameplates on, they're still DetonatioN FocusMe. And
Yes.
I wish I didn't have to divert back to that narrative so often, but sometimes you just do, because DFM are the team to beat. They are the team which have proven that they are, the best team in the first couple of weeks. And heck, the scary thing about this team is that this isn't even their final form. We get to actually pull out that meme because we know that this is Kazu, who wasn't really intended to be on this lineup. This is not Gang, who's one of the best players in the LJL.
Ebby in the top side, trading very heavily the moment he gets that Shroud to offer a little bit more safety, a little bit more chance to get through those passive rotations, and does so pretty well. And that's the kind of nameplate on stuff we talked about. Steel looking for a gank in his bot side, but will have walked across a ward. And Gango and NT doing what we expected of them, namely shoving in early on, and appear to have at least a gentle CS lead right now until Utapon will try and pick up some of this CS towards where his tower is. But either way, the pressure is there. That will mean that Hecarim gets to start up the Scuttle Crab, does so, gets to recall. And Steel will have to think about moving over to this top side river and trying getting a Scuttle Cramp there. He'll clear out 2 wards, though, for his trouble, so that's not a bad start to the game, I suppose, if you're Udyr.
It's a little bit annoying that now your bot lane duo has to be worried about, okay, there's a Scuttle Crab Shrine. We can't really do too much in terms of fighting around this bot lane CV2, because there's a good chance that Crash is going to turn up. And if the Hecarim turns up, gets the Conqueror proc, gets that Ghost running for the extra AD, the extra chase down potential, things get pretty awkward. In the mid lane, Arya is also saying, actually, I'm not going just for the full perma-shove in. Going to try and actually freeze the wave against this Victor a little bit, just because, there's no point in me opening myself up for ganks. I don't need to be taking that kind of heat in the early game. Even though Lucian is very strong in that 1v1, you don't want to get too cocky and start losing yourself some kills. And Arya actually has done that, and uncharacteristically, a number of times this split.
Yeah, there has been once or twice when either through some disconnects with where the jungler is, either through some disconnects about pressure and where he wants to be in the lane. Ari's kind of been caught a little bit flat-footed. The most notorious one is definitely that solo kill from Nation. So Arya tries to step forward a little bit here onto Ramone, but that was a good death laser to change that around the back a little. But Steel definitely looking to try and get in on this onto Ramone, who has no teleport, does have flash, but of course that also means no cleanse. And we'll have to see how he tries to get out of it as in comes Steel. There is the slap from the bear stance, and Ramone will get under tower. And now Crash is looking to turn it around.
Oh.
The devastating charge comes through, lots of damage coming through as the helicopter starts whirling up. First blood, turn around, Crash just pops Ghost and walks it down the lane.
And Arya just doesn't burn flash. Maybe thinks that he's trying to save it for a flash death laser rather coming out of Ramone. But that isn't even really what's on the cards. First death once again going over to Arya. And this lane dominant pick of the Lucian has to teleport back to lane, doesn't get control of it. And actually in the very first part of that play, wasn't really in position to follow up very well on that gank. Bit of a miscommunication by DFM.
Just a little, and that's kind of what we've been talking about. Sometimes it's just not quite there yet in the early game, and it certainly punished them a bit there. And honestly, even with the flash, that's Ghost on Hecarim. He runs real fast. He only needed an auto Q to really kill off Lucian. I'm not sure the flash would have saved him, but Steel is back to his old ways, looking for the lane gank in this bot size to punish the shove up. He's just waiting around. He wants to get onto Gango. This ruined Kalista would lovely not like to be there. Flash in from Alistair. Gango now getting out. Flash heal down. Enti trying to buy time, buy space. The hops are here, but Crash is looking for another counter gank. It's one down already, but Steel about to fall. Potentially good heal, but the onslaught of Shadow's fear will mean that Enti gets the turnaround. It is not the AD carry. It's not the jungler, though, but Crash. That's two counter ganks in a row that have worked out really well for the Hecarim, but it's a flash out from Ramone in mid as the culling came out from Arya.
Steel does a really nice job of trying to get some vision towards, get in, across vision rather, down into that bot lane brush, and Gango and Enti don't see it coming. It works out. This, of course, does have the follow-on effect of Arya getting to push in mid for the first time in quite a while after that death too, and getting a plate. So Lucian getting a little bit more on track with what they're supposed to be doing in the laning phase. On the bottom side, though, as you're saying, honestly, this duo of Gango and Enti doing pretty well. Unfortunately for them, it's not led to a CS lead, and it was, as you were saying, Gango dying in that play. Going back to that, we see, this is just really well played in terms of Kazo and Utapon, setting up for Steel, making sure that the Relic Shield stack went onto one of those forward minions that would have granted vision. And Gango just doesn't see it, just bluntly doesn't see it coming, but can you really blame them? And the only way this play is really saved is because of Enti just buying so much time, which does allow Crash to come steaming down the river. Doesn't have the Ghost this time, doesn't need it. It does have the level 6 already. And they managed to get out with a 1-for-1, which, looking at the start of that situation, is very, very... that's much more than I would have pegged them to get out of that.
Yeah, I have to agree. We said, oh, this is looking pretty rough. It's such a good lane gank, but Hecarim, for all that they, maybe not the best early ganker, was really not a bad early counter ganker, just because of how damn fast he is. That is twice now he's just popped the devastating charge. Last time it was the Ghost on top of that, and he's just there real quick if you buy enough time. And the likes of a Kalista and a Rel can certainly do that with some shenanigans in CC. You can buy time for the counter gank to come through, and it's worked out pretty well for Sengoku. They've got themselves the kill advantage, even if the last one went the way of the support. But DFM have decided they want to start up this early Herald, but Crash is unsurprisingly around one more time, and Paz has come down to get some wards and vision in as well.
So, Onslaught of Shadows coming up in the next few seconds. DFM might be able to get this Herald away before that is available. That leaves Gango alone on the bottom side versus Utapon, and it will be a free Herald, all things said and done. I wonder actually if it's the Mega Gnar timer that ends up stymieing any kind of approach from Sengoku, but at least they will get themselves first dragon in the game as a trade for the Herald.
They will. So it'll be first objective for first objective, but of course we said DFM probably want to use their early lane as best they can as Ebby goes in on that Shuriken flip. I think that might have been possibly ult. I don't think that was ult popped as well. I have
There was, yeah, you can see the mark.
Oh yeah, it has gone down. Did he go forward looking for some serious damage here? Has got half the HP bar, but of course that's with a Mega Gnar on top of it. So maybe trying to get an early Herald play best they could, but that means that Crash is setting up for diving bot side as Enti goes in, crashing down. Kazu tries to buy time, but there is no space for Utapon to escape. No use for the Killer Instinct, no use for the Flash. Kazu goes back in, but goes down, and it's a double to Gango's Callista.
They don't even need to use their Hecarim ultimate. That's how many options they've got. That's how many ways they have right into the backline, or in this case, the bot lane of DFM. Utapon dies for the first time. Plates are going to go down. They don't have the Herald, but of course, they will get a wave into turret, take down that first plate of the game too on that bot lane tower. Things going very peachy for Sengoku on the bot side of the map.
And they find themselves at a very happy 1,000 gold lead before they've even had a chance to think about lost waves and the likes of it. And you can see the gold difference there. It is in the bot side that there is a big difference. It is in the jungle as well, honestly, where there's Hecarim with that first blood and some other cash incentives is feeling a very happy horse. And we know what Hecarims are like with early gold. Namely, they get Trinity Force really fast, guys, and that's very scary.
You say that, I mean, it could always be the Divine Sunderer too. Actually, I don't know what the components he's got inventory.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, anyway, gets that one first item, which may be a selection of items, which is much less easy to say on cast. But I guess, I mean, the big thing to say now is, okay, we talked about Udyr being the early game jungler, being so easy and has so many options in this early game. Crash has been the one really determining what's been happening, what's actually going to be the outcome of so many of these plays, though, because they've been getting to the play with ample time to affect things.
They haven't. Part of that is early wave pressure in the bot side, means they can go for the dives, but the top side, Ebby, looking for another one of these engagements. This time he's got to steal her. The flash in for the bear stab, looking to get this last kill. They will get it, and now they're going to try and run away. The teleport comes through, but Ramune is just here to witness and mourn the death of his top laner.
And that's all she wrote this time. Doesn't get the level 6 all in as Evie. The second ultimate of the game, relatively clean. It comes in, does require the flash from Steel, but it will open up some extra options for DFM, who don't just have to play around this bot lane. Well, and thank goodness for that, because bot lane is not going well for them. It does allow them to maybe have some ability to use this Herald, though, to get someone like Evie very far ahead.
And, you know, this Callista has gone from 0-1-1 to 2-1-1 after that double under the bot side. And yeah, Utapon's keeping up relatively well in CS, 10 CS down, but that's not what you want to see if you are the DFM side, boys. As in goes Enti again to make sure that this one goes up even further. The Pierce comes through. Kazu buys
the headbutt away.
Time. The headbutt die away, but that is the flash to try and get the ultimate down, but that won't work either. Still looking for those spears, and Gango and Enti pull everything in the kitchen sink, and a Callista ultimate on top and won't quite find the kill, but Crash is looking to try and get in, but Steel is countering, is here to try and force the Hecarim away. Still the health bar advantage very much in favor of Sengoku Gaming. They're trying to contest around these Krugs, but won't get any more. And the moment we speak about bot lane, the moment they go for a very aggressive play, it'll get them another wave under tower. It'll get them another plate, but they won't find any kills as yet, at least.
So I don't think the play's ended just yet. Crash still down, and Steel at least has enough HP, as opposed to Kazu who had recalled just beforehand. And bot lane is such the name of this game. Let me tell you a little story, of course. I mean, you were there for it, you know this as well, but to everyone else out there, what happened with CGA 2020? What was the hallmarks of that team? Because Arya and Gango were both on that team. And most of the time it was, okay, Gango's probably going to have a really good laning matchup, probably get solo kills, probably team fight his team out of the ditches that they often put themselves in with the early game. The other thing was that Gango was the feast or famine player. He was maybe the most coin flippy player in the LJL, but if he ever got ahead, things got really dicey for the enemy team. So it meant that actually a lot of the time the key to beating the CGA of 2020 with Gango on that team was you put him on weak side, you make sure he can't play aggressively. That has not happened this game. Gango's had a very good laning matchup, and Sengoku are playing around it with some real style, and it's allowed Crash to get very far ahead in this game too.
He is ahead. Look at the stats there. He's, you know, on his way to a first item very comfortably. Has himself a good CS lead, a kill lead, a bounty even to his name early on into this game. It's led them to a 300 gold lead, which isn't all that much and is a far shy for that 1,000 odd they had a couple minutes ago, but that's because elsewhere on the map, DFM have managed to recover some of the deficits they found themselves in. It's led us to a very even mid-game right now. We've got about 10 seconds till the second Drake spawns. The first Herald was used mid. Probably not how DFM would have liked, but Steel kind of had to play keep away in bot lane, which meant that this Herald was in danger of running out, and he just had to pop it mid. They did get at least a couple plates, and it leaves that tower precipitously low. If someone can be left alone with some free time, that tower will surely fall in short order. But you know, it's not necessarily the best look. They've got a fair amount of plates of DFM. It's got Aria's Lucian up about 500 gold, which is good news for him. But you can see where the gold differences are. Top lane, Akali doing very well. Bot lane, Kalista up about 800 gold in this mid game is a pretty scary concept.
This is the thing, because it's not like you've got yourself like an Anivia or someone that's really, really good versus the Kalista and just saying, you don't really get to team fight. You can't zone out Gango particularly well. And I'm wondering at this point, just let Sengoku have the dragon if you're DFM, and maybe just take the mid lane out of turret and then play around the vision advantage you'll have just by taking that structure. But the problem is now that Ebby's got some real angles in top lane.
Did find a fantastic, perfect execution, but Paz managed to hop away from the second one. The great backstep on the Nart did mean that Ebby wasn't stunned or anything, but Paz still managed to make his way out of that. It'll give pressure on the top lane, but all the while, here comes the fight. DFM want to be around this dragon. It's a big engage. Hecarim's got
Gango's dead?
but Gango is dead. Crash into the backline, but he's surrounded by enemies. Arya trying to dash away, will get the kill. That's 2 for none right now. Paz is teleported in, but he can't find anything, and it's Drake for 2. DFM coming out pretty well ahead in that 4 versus 4, even if the Drake went the way of Sengoku.
Yeah, and imperfect execution in the top lane, made up for by the rest of Ebby's team. Arya gets a kill, Gango goes down, Crash goes down. Those are the 2 members. Gonna get a replay of how everything unfolded. It's piling on soon after. Steel gets into the thick of things on that Udyr, and this is exactly the kind of team fight we really thought would be happening. I guess the one thing which scares me for DFM is if you take that team fight, once that Victor has 2 items, 3 items, you probably lose Arya. You probably lose one of your people diving in too. Question is, can DFM pull off that kind of fight again, or will Sengoku actually be in a position to protect Gango and turn around with the Victor more efficiently?
First turret does go the way of Sengoku Gaming as we come out of the replay. Paz was given enough time to finish off the tower on the top side, and Ebby can't quite return the favor in the top, even if it does look pretty low. We've already said how the mid lane turret is low as well, but that leaves us again with this very even gold lead. You can see where the jungler proximity is. Interestingly, Crash hasn't spent that much time around bot lane comparative to, say, mid and stuff, but the gank that he has had down there has been pretty damn effective.
Well, I think that, I mean, it's not often we say that Steel gets out-jungled, rather, particularly in this split. He's just been such a stalwart for DFM, but Crash has been so much more efficient with his time. He's been farming very effectively, and every time it seems there's a play to be made, Crash is there on the scene with enough time to make a difference, and not late enough that of course, he's just wasted his time. So all of that 21% mid, that 10% bot has been very effective.
Have we cursed him? He's getting engaged on. He does manage to onslaught over the walls, but the onslaught is just a quick road to the grave, and Hecarim goes down the moment we praise him. Crash now in trouble. Steel has got the second Herald. They're going in on the top lane as well, and DFM really want to shove this one in, as there's the Magnet Storm as well to pull NT. NT trying to buy space to get Gango out, and he does so, which is good news for Sengoku Gaming, who do disengage the attempted dive in top lane. Herald will charge in top. They'll get the turret up there, and that is a return of turrets. They've caught the Hecarim out in the jungle.
Ask not what your Crash can do for your team, but what your team can do for your Crash, because Crash might have been propping up so many of the lanes early on, but doesn't have anyone to respond to that kind of jungle invade from DFM. DFM still struggling to try and shut down Gango and NT, though, because there was still a Kalista ultimate, all things said and done in that play. So DFM weren't even that close to taking down that duo, even though they had so many members on that top side.
Yeah, they definitely were. It was difficult. Obviously they got the great pick. They got the Herald down. They tried to burn some Sermon as best they could, and they do get the flash at least. But Steel also had to burn his flash. Steel obviously heard us talking some smack up against him and tries to go for a gank and does find some good plays. It's not like Steel hasn't found one or two good plays. There was
Absolutely
one top
not,
play
no.
where he got past. There's just been some great stuff from Crash that's kind of turned around what should have been really clean plays for DFM and really weren't. That time was a little bit more one-sided, even if it didn't go quite as badly as it could have gone because the bot lane managed to extricate themselves from a difficult situation.
So now we have ourselves with the early game is finished. We're into the mid game. We've got side laners doing side lane things, and we don't have a sizable gold lead. So then you think, okay, what are the best side lane allocations for both these teams? Okay, so Gnar into the Akali, into the Lucian, probably not going to be too happy. Victor can at least wave clear against them, and then that kind of comes down to, okay, well, what can these teams do to start forcing around the map? The big thing is that it's not just the side lanes that are going to have a lot of pressure for Sengoku. You can play around the Kalista and the Rel, whereas it's more about the Kai'Sa and the Alistar roaming out of something like the mid lane to affect these side lanes. This Kalista and this Rel can absolutely be the point of pressure for Sengoku. And then the onus is on DFM to say, can we actually shut down this Kalista once more? Because we managed to get them in a team fight, managed to get them in that bot lane gang. Struggled to stop getting Gango into side lanes and getting some farm, though.
Yeah, and that has been a big difficulty. Gango with this free farm is up over 10 CS a minute right now. He's looking pretty nice. He's got himself a Mortal Shield Bow. He's got himself a Hurricane as we speak about it alongside the Berserkers. Like, this Kalista is very strong. Even if he's died a couple times, he's still found a couple kills. He certainly found some lane advantages, but the moment we talk about gold leads being relatively immaterial, DFM do manage to find another turret and get themselves up to about 1,500, which is a decent gold lead, but at 20 minutes is significantly less of a deal than it would have been, say, 5-10 minutes ago.
Absolutely, but focusing more on the present, Ocean Dragon is live. 2 dragons to Sengoku, trying to build up towards that Ocean Soul point. DFM, they took the last dragon fight. They're going to hope to take their chances again in this one. Paz is a much better Mega Gnar fight for this play, though.
Teleport coming in from Ebby. In goes Kazu, but it's a little early, I think, as Akali just isn't here right now. Utapon, Killer Instincting into the backline. The culling going on to Ramana. He goes down, but it's still over onto... Steel rather falling down to Gango alongside Utapon. Topaz, who went in super deep. They're going to try and continue to fight in this 1 versus 4. It's a double. Topaz in this fight is all Sengoku all day. The split fight is very much in favor of Sengoku Gaming. Now Crash trying to chase down Arya. The devastating charges there. And he will try and cue his way to victory. Finds the shutdown on Arya, and it's a full ace to Sengoku Gaming in trade for just Ramane. And now they're thinking, screw the dragon. We'll think about maybe even the Baron here. At least Crash is going to try and get a hold of that Scuttle Crab while Gango solos out the Ocean Drake.
And, I mean, cue the victory around that fight. Cue the victory music as, really, Sengoku taking a fight completely in their prime. The big thing for me is that Mega Gnar bar. Kazu goes in, realizes that the fight has to be started at some point, can't really let the Rend get stacked up too far. I think the real problem is the fact that when Utapon goes in so deep, it's not like Ebby and Ari can immediately turn onto Gango. It's not like they can immediately take some of that pressure away from the Kai'Sa, who gets completely locked up. When that AD carry is down, it means that really a lot of the threat, which was present onto Gango, no longer there. It's not like you can have the single target Kai'Sa Q coming through, and then after that, it's a cleanup fight, one which, of course, the Hecarim excels in.
He certainly does. He finds himself a hefty gold lead. He is 3-2-6, 2 items in, and it was the Trinity Force we were wondering about earlier on and being dived on. Yes, Ramane falls. He's not really been involved in a lot this game because the side lanes have been the priorities mostly. But it does lead them at Soul Point, even if the gold lead is barely there. Soul Point is so huge, especially when you've got Kalista secure to make things so much more unfair in a straight smite fight, because it's 2 smites v1.
I mean, at the end of the day, the question is still going to be there for DFM. Can you kill the Kalista? If you can't, you probably lose the team fight, because when you've dived onto someone else, taken down Ramane early, yeah, okay, that's nice, right? But if you don't get the Kalista who is so strong against low-range compositions that don't have ample amounts of slows, point-and-click CC, to really lock down this hypermobile AD carry, Kalista is completely in their prime.
She's certainly going to be a danger. She's certainly going to be a problem for this Ocean Soul that will be coming up in a minute or two. And she'll certainly be a prime target. Whether that will actually work out is another matter, of course, because DFM will have all eyes on, and they've certainly got their own target access to back that all up. Alistair, Akali, hell, even that Flash chem tank from the likes of Udyr will be desperately trying to get onto Gangu, who has no QSS, no cleanse. It's relatively short range. Bit of contesting going around this mid lane, though, as Steel goes in, but here comes the rest of Sengoku going to try and turn it around. Kazu's going in, but he's by himself. That's a lot of damage coming out. The Magnet Storm as well, damaging so much, and the cow goes down. Utapon now needs to try and extricate himself away from danger. Killer Instinct back into lane, trying to buy time. Onslaught of Shadows is short. Won't find much more, but Kazu goes in, but he's surrounded and goes straight back down.
Utapon needing to pull off some escape artist antics, but does get out with their life. That's important because it means that actually Sengoku probably don't feel secure enough to go towards the Baron in their own right. But this, I mean, the way we're talking about these fights, this is still Sengoku having the priority in this game, deciding actually what's happening so often around the map. When Steel finally goes in for a play, it's Sengoku who have all the cards to play and say, all right, we can use these amount of abilities to try and stymie this engage, and we can turn around with all of our remaining ones. Crash in that fight, once again, has his Onslaught of Shadows available still, like, a good, 10 seconds into the fight, which means that DFM are still not burning enough for their aggressive plays, and they're really struggling to pile onto the right targets to actually get themselves a one-team fight.
I don't know whether this is a communication issue. I don't know whether this is just Kazu being perhaps a touch ahead of the play.
Comp difference?
Absolutely. But this is twice in a row specifically that the Alistair has gone in looking for these big 3-4 man headbutt poles, and the rest of DFM hasn't really been following up either quickly or being in position to do that. That last time, Kazu went in and Ebby was still finishing his teleport up in the enemy jungle. He was not there.
But I mean,
to be there in that fight. And this time, you saw Kazu go in and it's like, okay, the rest of the team don't really get on to the people they wanted to. DFM are looking to start up this Baron in a 2-man start, though. Might not be spotted out here. I think it's down about half HP, and Ebby's kind of looking to be a flanking dangerous Akali to buy space. Hasn't spotted anybody come in. It's down about half HP, and still Sengoku Gaming don't seem to know this is happening.
So Crash is now heading over, has Ghost, has ult, can get into the pit, and now half the HP is down.
Might be a bit risky. It's going to be the 50-50 that Crash gets. It was a nice, desperate attempt, but that was what it was, a desperate attempt, and the fight continues. Akali gets Hecarim, but remember, Baron is already down, and Gango trades it right back onto the Kinko Assassin, and now DFM trying to find their way out of the fight to shut down onto Gango. Arya putting out loads of damage. Utapon trying to buy space, but Paz is here, nearly at Meganar again.
Arya?
But that will be Ramune going down. Arya popping off in the back end of this fight, dashing away, but the Meganar is there, and it will be a 3-for-3, but Baron is stolen away by Crash, which is such a big deal.
So DFM find themselves a way to win or at least go even in a scrappy fight. It cost them a Baron to do that. Right, okay, maybe not something that they really wanted. They try and pull out some desperation plays, pull out something a little bit special. Sengoku are having none of it. Dragon is now spawned. That is Ocean Soul point on the table. Well, Ocean Soul itself on the table for Sengoku, and Crash is running from base. DFM will want to finish this very quickly.
They absolutely will, but they've also got to be aware that it's not just them around. Paz and NTR here. They've got full HP. The teleports are coming through. Crash is here as well, but they have to fight it. It's Ocean Soul Nymera. And even if Gango's going to be a touch late to the party, so is Utapon. Steel has been around his jungle trying to heal his way up, so he can be a threat in this fight. And this could be the fight that decides it all. Sengoku Gaming onto the Dragon. They've got that unfair advantage. Arya gets chunked out by massive amounts of damage. Arya is in the back end of this fight trying to buy time. But look, the Hecarim gets the Ocean Soul. Sengoku Gaming also find Kazu, who went in, as we mentioned. Onslaught of Shadow gets Steel as well. And that is a team fight victory alongside the Ocean Soul, alongside Baron for another minute or so, and Crash might not even be done, but he does decide to turn back onto the Krogs and allow Utapon back to the safety of his tower.
Sengoku, the team that went 0-2 in week 1, 1-1, struggling to find real victories in the LJL in the first couple of weeks, might just be taking down DFM. Actually, at this point, I say it's very favored for them to take down DFM. DFM are still struggling to kill off Gango. At this point now, actually, Ramune has become a huge issue on the Victor, because if you're going to start dashing in with your Akali, all of these low-range champions, the Gravity Field, and then crash with the Onslaught of Shadows, is doing so much work.
He's done so much work, and you saw Arya got chunked and zoned out, and you saw Kazu go in, Ebby go in, but it's once again, it's not the full team diving in, it's not everybody piling the right amount of damage onto, but we are in a second to go back at this Baron, which was off vision, and just so nearly worked for DFM until Crash manages to force his way into the pit.
And still, at some point, you kind of end up connecting the dots. 70 HP is the number to watch.
So
but the problem is
close.
here, one thing we actually haven't been tracking, that's a 3-level advantage in the jungle. You don't win those smite fights. For it to get that close is terrifying for Sengoku, but it does end up going the way of Crash. Either way, this fight still goes pretty even, all things said and done. I mean, I guess you could say, actually, for DFM to get that even fight after having half health on your jungler and your mid laner too, is not a bad kind of state of affairs. But at the end of the day, it's not like the DFM can clean up the last 2 members. They don't deny every single Baron buff. So the gold from taking Baron goes up to Sengoku, get them started a load of kills too. And they are well and truly in control of this game after all things are said and done.
Whoa, Utapon, we have been thinking has been having a quiet game. He certainly didn't have a quiet last team fight. Did a lot of work on the Kai'Sa. It's still not quite enough because we've already mentioned some slight comp differences. And comp differences plus Ocean Soul plus Baron is a little bit more than just a comp difference. Hecarim didn't get a lot done in the team fight despite the leveling.
Ebby
was trying to find a flanking position now to try and find his way out. Has got himself a perfect execution number 2, but has got to try and escape and certainly won't escape the Onslaught of Shadows and Callista backing it up. The Shadow Isles pair definitely ready for war on the top side.
Yeah, Ebby's okay. Not an Akali game to remember. That time he has his the perfect execution number 2, but is actually just flushed like a number 2 out from that top lane, back to the Death Realm. And the problem is, when you die against a team that has the Baron buff, when you die against a team that is so much in the ascendancy, you then don't have that extra member to defend the base. They're going to leave themselves 2 turrets, probably an inhibitor, for the overstep of Ebby, who was looking for something special. I understand that. You want to try and get yourself something to break this map pressure, which now Sengoku have, with a bit more smoke and mirrors. But at the cost of that, when you fail that play, you put yourself deeper into that self-dug grave.
Yeah, and the thing is, I do have to echo that. I think it was a nice idea. I understand the thinking, and honestly, when you're this far down, that's the kind of shenanigans, the kind of smoke and mirrors you do need to look for.
Yeah, the G2 antics, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, we're there. All right, we understand. But it just doesn't work out. He gets, as I say, smoked out of the smoke and mirrors, but the point probably still stands, even if I'm mixing my metaphors. And it looks bad, but you understand that those are the risks you kind of have to take, especially on something like an Akali, on something like the split pusher to an extent. And when you've got 96% stats against you, those are the kind of Hail Marys, tricky plays that maybe get you an angle back into the game. Otherwise, they just start piling a little bit more dirt on the grave, and that timeout, it was absolutely straight to the grave.
At the end of the day, it's this kind of the Doctor Strange phenomenon, right? Where they're like, okay, I've just had a look at how we win this game from this point. Honestly, we're going to have to do some really weird stuff after this point. It might not be obvious, but sometimes you need to take a bit of an indirect route to victory, take a couple of risks. You do have, 3 items on your Kai'Sa, on your Lucian. That's some stuff to play around. Problem is, there's a 4-item Callista with a GA, with an Immortal Shield Bow, with a Bloodthirster, with the Rel healing for the peeling for them as well. Sengoku are in an absolutely dominant position. The onus has been the entire game on DFM to say, how do you kill this Callista? How do you deal with Gango? How do you get into this team fight and end it before this very punishing composition of Sengoku start doing exactly what, as it says on the tin, punishing these shorter range members from DFM. And the question is, and the answer is obviously no, you can't do anything right now. And the answer has been largely no, we can't do anything.
No, we can't do anything. We have got a 3.5 item Kai'Sa. We've got a 3.5 item Lucian. So at some point, you're going to have to try and do something because you're already down 1 inhibitor. You're about to be down a second, as that second Baron went the way of Sengoku Gaming without any contest from DFM. And when, oh when, are they going to try and pull the trigger? Because at this point, Sengoku Gaming, particularly this Callista, particularly this Hecarim, are just so damn destructive right now.
And we still have to stop in and say, well, NT's not died this game. The Rel has
No.
been such a thorn in the side of DFM. Again, it's just another champion which fits this whole comp that Sengoku have and have succeeded so heavily with against the undefeated DFM coming into this game. I really have to praise what NT's been doing. The laning phase was immaculate. And this is a guy that has often been a bit inconsistent, has often been the butt of too many jokes within these games and saying, and he's been called out again. Well, not today. Remember that he has finished top 3 in pretty much every split he's been a part of, and he's trying to make sure that we don't write him off too early into this split, because DFM, they're going to have to fight over this Elder. Maybe this is their way in, but the odds are stacked very, very much in Sengoku's favor.
This may well be the fight that decides the game. It's 33 minutes in. It is an 8,000 gold lead for Sengoku Gaming. It is DFM with their backs against their wall, looking down the barrel of their first defeat of the split. And Sengoku Gaming at 2 and 4, finally starting to show some of the prowess that so many Japanese analysts were praising, hoping this team would show. I don't think they were necessarily expecting it to be first shown in a game versus DFN. But Gango will start up this Elder Drake solo right now, and they're just zoning DFM out of this river. They're finally going to start to try and force their way in, but Ramune starting to chunk out a little bit harder now. Ingo Steel trying to get some space. There is Kazu as well at the front line. Elder Dragon somewhat reset here as Ramune back over towards this blue buff pit, and this is a back and forth contest in the river. Here goes Ebby. The teleport's coming through. Elder Dragon down to about half HP as
Arya's
Ebby
not
into
there.
the back lane. Arya isn't there again. There has always been this slight disconnect, and Hecarim Crash secures the Elder Dragon, and the kills start raining through. Utapon gets 1, but it is, by the time that it's all said and done, 3 over to Sengoku Gaming, who only need a single hit more onto Ebby surely to find the execute. He's going in again, but Gango gets that kill. Ramune has teleported to the towers, and Detonation FocusMe will be handed their first defeat of the split by Sengoku Gaming after some immaculate counter ganks, after some immaculate Kalista play, after Crash goes crashing into the backline and finds 2 massive smite wins on the Uber buffs.
All aboard the Sengoku hype train, coming out really strong in this game. Started from that draft phase. We said, nameplate's off. Okay, yeah, I really like this comp from Sengoku. They can punish the deep dives coming in from DFM. They do exactly that. Nameplate's off. Be damned. Sengoku are here, putting their names right into the conversation. But we'll have to talk about that a little bit more in a couple of minutes, won't we, Sam?
We absolutely will. To see how the freight train thritted through the slightly open door, we had that metaphor set up already in advance. Well, you'll have to hang around, and we'll talk about it in just a moment or two.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to the LJL Analyst Desk. This time for the OU last one. Initialize in the center, Nightmare over on the other side. Gentlemen, we just saw Detonation FocusMe on their 6-0 win streak, potentially setting themselves up to break the spring and summer record, which they had tied with V3 in 2020. It's gonna have to be a remake because they're gonna have to try again in summer, gentlemen. Sengoku Gaming somehow overthrew them, and I think it would be a huge discredit if we didn't talk about the man that really set Sengoku Gaming up for success, and that's Crash on this Hecarim.
Absolutely fantastic. I mean, there is something to be said about champions which don't have solid gank opportunities. But so something which Blabber said, actually, over in the LCS, over in NA, says that, so yeah, okay, maybe my champion's not the best at ganking, but if you play disrespectfully around me, if you give me that opening, it doesn't matter. That's what happens to Crash. He finds the angle, and I mean, at this point, I'm like, oh, so I'm just gonna quickly, no one needs to see that. And yeah, there's nothing to be said about LJL GT. Actually, it probably makes it more fitting, actually, losing a game in that fashion. But no, Crash just blew open the early game, a couple of really choice counter ganks, and being so efficient about their time spent on the map. Crash is now really starting to live up to some of that hype we had around them.
Yeah.
I mean, to echo that, like, Hecarim, if nothing else, is really quick. Really quick, especially when you're running. He basically gets to ghost devastating charge down the mid lane to get that counter gank off, and you don't manage to disengage that. Hecarim is not the best ganker in some ways, but if he gets behind you or he gets to run you down, he's really not that bad. And he just, like, they dive too far, they dive too greedily, they get punished in the mid lane. It happens in the bot lane as well, where he gets to turn up because, again, devastating charge makes this guy really quick. He turns up far faster than you expect him to. He's off to a very nice early lead, and suddenly this jungler, this Hecarim, this carry is off to a nice spot, and Crash definitely managed to do a lot with that.
Absolutely, he did a huge amount with it, really put Sengoku's early game on his back, and, well, overthrew Steel, which was an unexpected part, and that's part of where Sengoku really went right. Initialized this dragon control, this objective control around the map. They got all the dragons. There was just nothing it felt like DFM could do. They did go for a desperation Baron, but that was rather in vain in the end.
It was. I think, you know, that bot lane was pretty even for a little while, especially after those first couple ganks came through, and, you know, you saw Steel manage to get onto Gango, shut him down, he dies, doesn't get the kill, whereas Utapon does. Okay, maybe this works out even. Then they get the clean 2-throw into the turret, and Gango gets 2 kills, and then they have permanent pressure from bot lane. Yeah. Then they get to set up with a fed, over-leveled Hecarim off those early ganks, and a Kalista with Rend around the dragons when they've already got vision control. There is no way for Steel to think about contesting those dragons. There is already a smite disadvantage from the levels. There is a Kalista on top of it. The dragon stacking starts happening, and yes, the gold is relatively even. Yes, you're seeing maybe the Ebby and Lucian get some nice damage points into the mid lane and top lane, but it doesn't blow anything open, and there is no way in hell that DFM could even think about stealing away those drakes.
And, well, honestly, Nightmare, instead of handing it over to you and saying, hey, can you give me more analysis, I think let's actually rewind time back to before the start of the game. This pick and ban phase, I'll be honest, this might be one of the most confusing drafts from my perspective from DFM.
Yes, and we were, well, okay, we were much more harsh when we were on break. The word we used was arrogance. It's arrogance, right? You look at this, you go to blue 4 and 5 for the last couple of picks for DFM, and you say, okay, so there's a Gnar, there's a Hecarim, there's a Rel. So what is Sengoku's team going to do? It's going to dive in, and it's going to punish low-range carries. It's going to punish these people that want to stick around in the fray. Why are you picking Akali and Lucian? I think Akali on its own, Lucian on its own, maybe that's something you can play around. Lucian is not going to be a counter pick at this point, though. It's not like you know you're into an absolutely winning matchup and into the victory. It just ended up being a bit of a moot point. Died for first blood even, right? But then you look at this Akali and Lucian together, they really, really struggle to shut down what Sengoku were doing. And this is after the Kalista's been locked in too. Why don't you lock in something like a Jason and Orianna, giving yourself still a good matchup in that top lane, but some more range and some zone to play with? What are you going to do if, you know, what are you going to do about this Kalista? Kalista's answers has always been zoning, AoE slows, having something to keep them at range and not allow them to get into the thick of things. Force them to flash into the fray. I feel like DFM kind of shot themselves in the foot with their last couple of picks, but that isn't to say that Sengoku didn't set themselves up for absolute success, because they did end up drafting themselves some really good combos. I'm especially looking at this Rel Callista combo, and I'm thinking, this could actually end up being a staple of the LJL if it always works out that well, because I was very impressed by that.
Well, there's going to be a lot of takeaways from this game. However, the largest takeaway for me is how mad is DFM right now, and how bad is this next game we're about to go into, gentlemen, versus Burning Core. We'll grab your thoughts all around that before we go into that game in a moment, but we're going to go take a quick break. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back.